So, why is there so much suffering and pain in this world? You may have asked yourself that question more than once in your life. You may be asking it now. You may be wondering, why? And what am I to do about it? Well, I picked up this book when I was at the Unity Convention a few weeks ago. It was actually a gift from the author, Craig Calavo. It's called Awaken the Sleeping Giant, The Time Is Now. And I picked it up and I started reading it the other day. It's a really easy read. And I was about 3 pages in when I knew that I had to share it with you. So I'm going to be sharing some ideas from Craig's book over the next few weeks. One of the questions he asked in the intro was, why is it that we keep repeating the same mistakes? Why is it that we keep treating symptoms instead of looking for and curing root cause? What is the explanation? Have you asked yourself those questions before? Yeah. What are we doing here? Why aren't we learning? Why are we back where we were before? So there's 6 parts to this book. I'll be taking a couple each week, and today we're going to cover the alien birth and the school of life. So alien birth, he says, is when we transition from a world of pure spirit into the world of form, into human form. So when we're born onto this earth. Prior to coming here, he says we were all pure spirit. And this is an amazing adventure for us and downright scary. Everything here is foreign. We're delivered into the world as a body and soul, and when a newborn baby emerges into the world, they emerge from a place that was warm and safe and comforting. And often they're pulled into this world. It must seem violent to them, almost. And everything is new. Feeling the air on their skin, the light, the sounds. In those first moments, in those early days, in the first few months of life, they're probably just trying to figure out what happened. And the author says, the good news is that they're still very much connected to their divine truth, kind of trying to figure out what's going on here. Y'all know I have a brand new grandbaby, right? He's going to be 2 months old already in a couple of days. But Cameron loves to be held. In fact, the only way his mommy and daddy can get any sleep is that they let him sleep on them. As soon as they lay him down, he can be zonked out. Takes him a minute or two sometimes, and he realizes he's alone, and he starts wailing. I can understand that, wanting to be comforted, wanting to be held close. And Calavo says that as babies begin to develop, they begin to experience fear that comes from separation, believing that we are separated. And I thought it funny that we experience that same feeling, even though we've been on this planet for more than a couple of months. We experience that same feeling. Sometimes it's feeling a separation when we're afraid. When we say, what is this world coming to? Or we're in pain, physically or emotionally. We feel separation, and it brings on fear. We went through a time, though, where we grew out of infancy and into becoming children. Remember, Jesus loved the children. He always talked about the children. Be innocent like the children. Play like the children. Let the children come to me. Because when we're children, every moment is a great exploration. Every moment is exciting. I got to think that they must still be aware of the divine presence within them. They must still feel that connection very strongly. The author says, children are innocent, trusting, unworldly beings not yet corrupted by this strange new world. You may also know that I have a 2-year-old grandchild. She's in this phase. Everything is exciting. She doesn't know anything about worry or sadness, or she knows that everything's play and everything's exploration, whether she's playing with her toy trucks or pretending she's a mommy to her dolly, or a photo that I saw yesterday on Instagram that made me melt a little bit at a lavender garden, bending over smelling the lavender. Oh, melt my heart. She's so pure. She's so open. She's exploring. And as long as her needs are provided, she doesn't worry. And then we grow a little bit more. And we're taught how to survive in this earthly world. And it's very important. We need to survive. We need to stay safe. But when we start to discover that and become aware of that, our divine nature kind of takes a back seat. The author says at this point, our soul will fall into a deep sleep, but just for now. It doesn't leave us. It just goes to sleep. And we go through our lives beginning to understand that the human self is the real self, the important self. Calavo says this is when the birth of the bodyguard takes place. So the bodyguard, as he refers to it, we might refer to as the ego, or the small self, or the human self. But he says we rely on our bodyguard to protect us, and the more that we trust the bodyguard, the more the sleeping giant, which is our divine nature, becomes a distant memory. There's nothing wrong with this. It needs to happen. We need to be in this earth, and we need to be in this school of life, and that's the next phase. We enter the school of life, probably about the same time we enter school. And the alien that was born here, the one that knew it was divine and then came into this human world and was frightened and then got excited and now is trying to figure it all out, that alien must learn how to live in this earth suit and survive. In other words, our divine self needs to learn how to become an earthling. Think about it. What if you found yourself suddenly in a foreign land, living there? What would you do? Would you hide away? Or would you immerse yourself? Would you immerse yourself in the culture? Would you study the culture? Would you try to learn the language? Would you observe the behavior of others? I believe you would. You would want to try to figure it out. And that's what the school of life is all about. We came as pure spirit beings into a human form. And we're trying to figure it out. Trying to learn how this works. How can we be safe? How can we protect ourselves? And there's so much to learn. And gosh darn it, if I didn't think I already learned that lesson, and here it is presenting itself again, right? And again, and again, and again. The author says we must live through the highs and lows of the human experience. It's what grows us. It's what teaches us. He tells his own story. He says when he was in his 30s, He was in a kind of dark period in his life, like not sure where his life was going, what direction it was going, and he just plain and simple wasn't happy. And he asked a friend if she wanted to go out to dinner one night after work. And she said, "Oh, I can't tonight because I have a meeting, but my meeting's over by 7 o'clock. Do you want to go at 7? And he said, "Yeah, sure, that'll work." And she goes, "Why don't you come to the meeting with me?" And he's like, "Well, what kind of meeting is it?" And she says, "Course in Miracles." He said, "I never heard of it, but I figured I could use a miracle. And what the heck, we're going to go out to dinner together anyway after." So he went to the Course in Miracles, and he listened to the lesson and the conversation that took place afterward. And then when he got to dinner with his friend, he quickly changed the subject because that was all weird to him. It just sounded too weird. It was a very short time later that a friend of his invited him to attend a Sunday service, to which he said, "I'm not a religious person. I've never been a religious person." And his friend said, "That's okay, it's unity." So he went to this unity service with his friend, and he heard a very positive and uplifting message. And at the end of the service, when they were doing the announcements, they were announcing how excited they were that Dr. Wayne Dyer was coming to their church and was going to do a presentation. Well, he remembered reading a Wayne Dyer book back when he was in college, a self-help book that he really liked. And he said, "Next thing I know, I'm in the bookstore buying my ticket." I show up at the presentation, and it was all right. But this wasn't the Wayne Dyer that wrote the self-help book that I liked. This Wayne Dyer talked about, well, he said the G word too much. All he talked about was God, and I thought, who is this man? Because I don't think I ever saw that word in his book before. What is going on? So Craig says, that all happened within a couple of months period. Course in Miracles, Unity Service, Wayne Dyer. And he says, if I had been more aware at the time, I would have known that it was the universe guiding me. Unfortunately, I was still clueless. But I kept reflecting on the experiences. And he says, I now realize that my higher self was waiting patiently and would continue to wait patiently for me to understand the nudges that were coming from within me to awake the sleeping giant. He said he remembers suddenly feeling a sense of urgency, that there was a strong longing in him to be more purposeful, to follow his instincts rather than the direction of this protective bodyguard, doing what's right, trying to do what's right all the time. And as I read that, I said, I remember that. I remember when the sleeping giant began to awaken in me. Do you remember that? Do you remember that time or those times in your life? If you were a clueless one, it might have taken you a few times before you realized this nudge was coming, and it wasn't coming from outside of you, it was coming from inside of you, and it was saying, wake up, here I am, let me help you. Maybe you tried and tried again in an effort to connect with God or a higher power. A lot of people talk about trying to connect with a God they're not even sure they believe in. And maybe you felt like you failed. You did it wrong. Nothing changed. And some people feel like, they've been separated from God for so long, it's too late. But the wonderful thing is you've never been separated at all. That part of you just went to sleep while you were out here in the school of life learning what you needed to learn. The divine nature was always in you, and it may be asleep, but it can always be awakened. And then we go back to the school of life. We repeat our mistakes over and over. As individuals, as a community, as a world. as an organization, because we're still learning how to live in this earth, how to be in this form. We might continue to fall short of our dreams and our goals. We might continue to look for the reason or the excuse why something didn't go our way. And the easiest way to do that is to blame someone else. In the school of life, we can get wrapped up in the drama or the doom and gloom. And then we awaken again. We can't feel bad about repeating the lessons, getting drawn into the drama. We are living in a human world. Now, this happened to me just this week. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just didn't have any energy. I was like, I don't care about anything. Nobody knows, like, whatever. I don't have to do anything today if I don't want to. Well, that should have had me jumping for joy. Woo, I'm free. I can go do whatever I want. Don't want to do anything. What's wrong with me? And then I realized I was feeling the pain of the whole world. My empathy was on overdrive. I was feeling it all, and it was feeling really heavy, and I didn't think I could handle it. Because don't you know that my divine nature is fully awake? And why was I feeling, where was this? I'm a minister, for crying out loud, y'all. I'm an ordained unity minister. And I got pulled down into the muck. And I cried. And I cried for the whole world. The yo-yoing can be very unsettling at times. And I asked myself, why do I keep forgetting the truth of who I am? Why does this keep happening? Why am I stuck in this earth school? And then I talked to my beloved coach, Joanne. And Joanne said, we need the contrast to help us remember our truth. No matter what happens, it's all for your own good. Even the painful things can be seen as a blessing because you're learning from them. And your role is to remember your truth and return to it as quickly as you can, and to transmute the pain into love. And I said, and she said, you signed up for it. I said, I did. She said, you did. You signed up for that. You said, I'll do that. Here I am, Lord. You called me. I'll do that. I'm willing to feel all the weight. I'm willing to express all the sadness and pain. I am willing to take a real look at what's going on out here and then bring it in here and say, it's all for our learning. It's all for our growth. And we, none of us, not even ordained unity ministers, are meant to do it alone. We don't override that. We don't escape that. And the more real we can be with that, the stronger our connection to the divine becomes. Too many of us are still sleepwalking through life. That's why our vision says we celebrate a world awakened to love. Wouldn't that be grand? If the whole world was going to awaken at one time. But we can't wait for that. We can't wait for everybody else to wake up. We need to do it for ourselves now. How? Practice. Practice. Think about yourself like a computer. A computer needs to be programmed, right? I'm borrowing this from the book. He talked about computer programming. We also are programmed. Data in, data out, right? What kind of data are you feeding yourself? Is it the news? Is it your friends and your neighbors' problems? Or is it divine truth that you know? How are you being programmed? And Calavo says, you want to graduate from this school of life? The first step is to trust your teacher. And when we truly learn how to trust our higher power, when we truly understand that there is something greater than this and it wants to come forth from us, we will be willing to feel the pain and release it. Author Anais Nin says, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. It's time for us to blossom, to open up, to let ourselves be led by the universe, not by the world. Up to this point, we've let the bodyguard run the show most of the time. Don't be mad at your bodyguard or your ego. It keeps you safe and protected. You're here and alive today because of that one. Our job now is to find a way for the bodyguard and the divine self to work together. And that's our journey through life. That's our faith path. That's what's ours to do. So don't get upset with yourself that you're still in the school of life when you thought that you were so beyond that. You've reached enlightenment, and then you fall back down. Remember what Mr. T said. Don't be a fool, stay in school. You remember that? It's okay to be in the school of life. You are a human being in a human body, living in a human world. Okay? Okay. We need to be present here because it is only here that we can do the work. And what is the work? Feeling it, seeing it, hearing it, living it, working to understand it, even when it makes us go, and then coming back to the truth we know. That's our journey through life. That's your spiritual path. That's the biggest work we could do. And even if it falls apart, do it anyway, right, Stacy? Do it anyway. Love them anyway. Build it anyway. Dream it anyway. And keep doing it. Don't let this world get you down or keep you down. Acknowledge it. Feel it. Move through it. Reconnect. And one day we will all experience the peace and the joy and the love of oneness. Namaste.